All right, so hopefully you're in the right place, right time. So my talk is called Sarah the Explorer, Navigating and Customizing the SharePoint Interface. So we'll get started a little bit about me first. Oh, sorry, not me first, sorry. I forgot I added these slides in. So I'm so honored to be a part of this event because it's such a good cause, UNICEF helping kids who are really in need. So please donate. Any penny counts, a dollar, anything. So really, all you have to do to get this QR code is take your phone and open up your camera and hover over it, and it'll pop down on the top. I don't know if you saw it there, but one of my other talks I like to uh, show you how to do that. So it's super easy to get the link and to donate. It's a really awesome organization, so please consider doing that. And thank you to our sponsors for setting this all up. I'm super excited to still be involved with speaking virtually during this crazy time, so thank you so much for having this set up. And lastly, just like how I showed you with using your phone to scan these QR codes, please consider giving some speaker feedback and some event feedback. All right, now about me. So my name is Sarah Patrick. I graduated from high school just 2 years ago now from a program called the Science and Mathematics Academy in Northern Maryland. I'm currently going to be a junior at the University of Maryland College Park, where I'm double majoring in information science and operations management and business analytics. Some of my opportunities that I've been super grateful to have was an internship with the Project Management Institute for the Baltimore chapter. I was an intern for the Northeastern Maryland Technical Council, and also currently I am interning as a junior fellow at the Library of Congress. And today I'll be telling you about my other internship with the Smithsonian. So a quick plug for me, go ahead and follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on both of those at all my speaking events. And these are some of the photos here that I like to post about, things I'm up to. And quickly, I wanted to discuss my volunteer experience and what I'm really passionate about. So I volunteer for an organization called Tech Girls, which is a nonprofit group dedicated to sparking the interest of tech in young middle school age girls. So there have been studies that shown that girls during that middle school age, that's when they get interested in tech, but then also lose interest after they grow out of that age. And that's due to not a great amount of mentors and role models and lack of real life examples in their school life. So Tech Girls provides these workshops that they provide the curriculum, the slide deck, everything you need to know to teach a subject that's more realistic tech world. And you teach these girls that workshop. It's a hands-on tech workshop, and they learn so many new things. Tech Girls provides workshops on so many different topics regarding tech, and from my 4 years of doing this, of volunteering, they love it. Girls get so into it, and I really truly believe we're making a difference because they really enjoy every workshop we hold. So here's some of the pictures from my experience. The top left one, it was my very first workshop, and the girls were just so excited. The one on the bottom left is when I gave a keynote speech about my experience as a role model for young women in tech and my experience with Tech Girls. The last photo on the right was when Tech Girls set the world record for the most girls coding at once. So we had about 20 plus locations all across the US and a couple other countries for girls learning how to code in HTML at the same time. And we had 364 girls, I believe, somewhere around there. And yeah, it was really awesome. And unfortunately, that was last year before the pandemic when we were all allowed to be together, but I'm excited for when Tech Girls is ready to beat that world record. So real quickly, consider volunteering for Tech Girls. It's at techgirlswithaz.org/volunteer. All right, now to actually get into the talk, I want to give you some background on what Smithsonian is if you are unfamiliar with it. So Smithsonian Institution is the world's largest museum, education, and research complex, consisted of 19 museums, a national zoo, and 9 research facilities. So the next bullet underneath is Smithsonian's mission is shaping the future by preserving our heritage, discoursing new knowledge, and sharing our resources with the world. So it's actually really interesting of how Smithsonian got started. It was James Smithson is from Britain, and when he passed away, he left all his money to the US, and all he wrote with it was to create an establishment for increase and diffusion of knowledge. So he left it up to the US to figure out what to do with it, and that is what became the institution of all the museums, and it's really dedicated to learning and increasing that knowledge, like he said. So some of the most popular museums that you might have heard of and just not known it was Smithsonian is the Air and Space Museum, Natural History Museum, American History Museum, and the National Zoo. Those are all Smithsonian things that you can visit, and the best part of it is free admission. So Smithsonian is nonprofit, so it's all free tickets that you don't have to worry about. You can just go and visit anytime you want. So that's what I really love about Smithsonian. So if you're ever in the DC area, they have a couple facilities in, I believe, New York and some other areas, but most of them are in DC. If you're ever in Washington, DC, go ahead. You have to visit them. They are awesome. Just one last little plug for Smithsonian. I, again, did an internship with them last summer, and I absolutely loved it. So if you're on the job hunt, here are some links for full-time positions and also internships if you know students like me looking for a summer experience. So like I said, I had the privilege of serving as the OCIO SharePoint intern last summer, and I got to work on the SharePoint team in helping their migration and further development of their intranet. They're in the process of, or at the time, they're in the process of moving to SharePoint Online. So today I'm going to be talking about SharePoint Online and customizing that interface. So the project I was given for the summer was creating an interactive organization chart. So you can see here the org chart that was provided at the time, and those who I was working with was emphasizing the importance of knowing each other's units and what they do. So for example, the OCIO, we want to have a description of what we do, but we want to go to an interactive org chart and be able to quickly see what the other divisions do. So we want to see what the secretary does or what the American History Museum does, and a quick description all in one place in that interactive organization chart. So let's take a quick look at what they currently had. It was just a PDF. And this version I am loading up is actually the most recent version, so it looks a little bit different. But you can see here how their hierarchy works. And then on some of them, I can click on it. So we'll look at this one under Secretary for Museum and Culture. And it takes me to a new PDF for further hierarchy, which is simple. But again, it doesn't have that information of what each unit does. And that was what was really important of the SharePoint team that told me. They want us as the Smithsonian to be able to quickly learn about each other, because that was really important. All right, so the goals of this project was to create a working image map of Smithsonian Institution's organization chart that will use pop-up windows instead of opening a new tab or window, and providing all that information of each unit in one place. Additionally, my personal goals was to learn more about Smithsonian as the new intern and also develop my skills in SharePoint, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So if you're not familiar with any of those, I'm going to quickly go over them as an intro for my beginners here, because I was at the time too. So quickly, I want to give you an overall end result. So as I go further through this presentation, you have an idea of what we are working towards. So here I am in Smithsonian's intranet of SharePoint Online. So you can see here I'm on this main homepage, I've called it, of the Smithsonian organization chart. And I can click on the unit and it comes up with this modal window. So instead of, like I said, a new tab or a whole new window, it still stays in the same window, just a little pop-up. And I can see all the information needed about the unit. To move forward, like you saw in the PDF, on some of them I could click on it, it would take me to a new PDF with further hierarchy. So here I'm going to click on one of those boxes. In this image, it was indicated in blue. And it takes me to a new page this time to show that further hierarchy. So now under this page, I can click on those boxes and get the same modal effect that I got on the original homepage. If I want to go back to the homepage, instead of having to navigate back through the back button, I have that link there to be convenient to go back that way. So yeah, that makes really easy navigation of the image map. And I'm going to be telling you all about how I was able to get to that point. So first I started with a lot of research. I was giving these attributes to find on each unit, and that's what I was told was priority of getting to know all about a new unit I was unfamiliar with all in one place. So this included the name of the unit, their abbreviation, because Smithsonian loves their abbreviations, a short summary, their staff listing, which was provided through Smithsonian Institution. Prism is their internet, so a URL to that Prism URL. And then they usually had an external one as well, then that was open to the public. So some of those didn't have them. Not all of those fields were filled for every unit, but these were the basics that we wanted, if available. So since I did these as my research, I knew these were going to be my SharePoint columns. So my first demo is showing you how once I got all my research in an Excel sheet, how I easily got that into SharePoint. So first we're going to take a look at the Excel sheet that I had made. As you can see, it's pretty long. The Smithsonian has a lot of units. And then I'm going to highlight the whole thing and format it into a table. So you're seeing that here. Up here, format as a table, and it really doesn't matter what color. I just picked one. That's under the Home tab. So then under Design, once it's a table and still highlighted, under Export, you do Export Table to SharePoint. And it pops up with this window, and that's where you put your SharePoint address. So that's the URL for Smithsonian's. You do the name of your list, a description if needed. And then when I hit next, it's going to identify what type of data is in each column. So you can see here that the ones that are text, I want to be text. And then the ones I want hyperlinked also are hyperlinked. So I'll quickly pause this, go back. If one of those is not what you want the data type to be, that's how you can easily tell and go back into your Excel sheet and fix it. So then it can all be the same data type because you can easily see it here. So you hit finish and it pops up with where it exported to in SharePoint. So I click on that link and it's already in there for me. So I actually stumbled upon this method later in my internship. Originally, I was just copying and pasting my Excel sheet and doing, I made my own list and made the data types already and just copy and pasted, which was fine, but this made it so much more efficient that it already identified the data types of each column. So that's a little tip that I realized more people didn't realize, and it was super helpful. All right. So now that we know we got all the information into SharePoint, we want to figure out how to place it all and navigate it. So this is where I get into my site pages. Again, as you saw in the PDF, you could click on some of those boxes to do another PDF. So I created that kind of effect with different pages. So with my site pages, I had that main home page, which is what we saw in the very first demo. And then for each blue unit, like I said, that's what indicated that it goes to a new page. I created a new site page in SharePoint for each one of those, and I have all those listed here. It looks like we have 4, 5, 6, 7 pages that I made in addition to the home page, so 8 pages total. So I'm going to show you how I made the site pages, and I made this all ahead of time so they're ready to go for when I wanted to place them in the actual image map. So I'm under Site Contents in my SharePoint site. I'm going to hit Site Pages. And that's where I can look at all of them that are existing. So here you can see I have my image map and all the other pages I already had of existing. So above that, I'm going to click New. And with the drop-down arrow, I want to do a new site page, of course. So with that, it already makes it, which is really great how fast it was. And I named mine right away, so I knew which unit it was being applied to. So that's the steps that I did 7 times to make a new page for each of those larger units that had further hierarchy. All right, So now we're about to get into the technical part where I talk about the code I had to use. But first, again, like I said, for my beginners, I want to go over what each thing is before we get confused. So first, what is HTML? That is the standard markup language for web pages. So I like to think of HTML as like the foundation and the frame of what you're building. And then you add the other things which I'll discuss next to make it pretty and actually working. So HTML is that foundation, the code to get everything set up and ready to go for later steps. CSS is the language that describes the HTML content. So CSS is like the paint and the prettiness of what styles the HTML code. So back to my analogy, HTML is like the wood and the nails to build a house, and then CSS is painting it and adding decorations, making it look nice. And lastly, we have JavaScript, and that is the programming language of HTML and the web, and that's what makes the code dynamic and interactive versus static. Before, with just HTML and CSS, you can see it, but it doesn't do anything. JavaScript adds those functions to make it interactive. So back to my house, HTML is the wood, the nails, CSS is my paint, and the decorations. JavaScript is the actual actions. I can actually open the door. I can actually walk up the stairs. The functions I can actually do around the house. So lastly, before I get into all the code, I don't want you all to be scrambling, writing down the code or taking pictures. Don't worry, it's all on my GitHub. And if you don't know what GitHub is, that's a code hosting platform where people can put up their code, and it's meant to be like open source, or you can store it there for future purposes. So this is my GitHub where I have posted all of the code I have worked on for this image map. Go ahead, feel free to look at it, edit it for your purposes. And I'm going to be going over what each part of it means in the rest of this presentation, and also note the things to change, because right now the code in there is everything that I use, all of my links that won't work for you. So just keep that in mind, if those are the things you're going to have to change. But yeah, the code is all up on GitHub, so don't worry about writing it down. All right, now that we got all that covered, let's get into the actual nitty-gritty of the code. So before I keep saying we're going to get into it, I'm just so excited. One more introduction in case you don't know. So again, like I said, I wanted it to be an interactive organization chart. So how am I going to make that interactive? How am I going to be able to click on it? So that's where we are presented with an image map. So that is a list of coordinates relating to a specific image in order to create a hyperlink areas. And those areas are called hotspots. So if you remember from my very first demo, you could see that when I hovered over the square that said Board of Regents, the cursor turned into a click, and I was able to click just in that area. And I'll be going over how to make those. So now the code, the nitty gritty. Don't get too overwhelmed by this if you're a beginner. I'll explain it all, no worries. So this is the code of setting up the image map. So I have the top here that identifies that I'm about to make a map. And I also have color coded my code here a bit. Everything in yellow are the things to change to make it unique to the image map that you're making. So we have the name here, of course, to identify what map you're making, and also an ID. Both of these are used throughout other codes to refer back to this map. Additional code is going to go here, which we'll go over that next. I end the map, and then at the very bottom, that's where I initialize the actual image for that map. So I give the image its own ID, alternate text if there's connectivity issues and it doesn't load, the link to the image, and then this other code for the map for another way to refer to that map later. So now that hotspot code, that's that area that I was talking about that's identified for what to click on. We give the area name here, the link to that content, and then the coordinates as well. So I have this function here highlighted in purple because I change it later depending on the action I want. Right now, when I click on this hotspot, it opens up a whole new window. So I actually change this later for either if it's going to a new page or if I want that to be the modal pop-up. So I'll note on that later. So just to give you an example of what all of that put together looks like, here's the code that I used. So I named it, of course, Smithsonian Organization Chart. I named these maps by the numbers, and you can see the names I give it, which corresponds to the name on the PDF that I was originally using. A SharePoint link, because I had all the information in SharePoint already. So this looks at the list I made with all that information for my research. And then these are coordinates that I use from another method that I'll touch on in a minute. Same thing with this image part down here, the ID on alternative text, and the link, just like all the things I said previously. All right, so how do I get this all into SharePoint? I've shown you a lot of code, but not a lot of action yet. So unfortunately, SharePoint Online does not have a script editor web part for modern yet, which is weird because that is all I used during my internship. Smithsonian provided me with a web part that they had written themselves that I used throughout these demos. But I wanted you all to have an option too. So I found another GitHub link of code to get that script editor set up in your SharePoint Online as well. So hopefully that will help to get that web part working, because I found it super helpful. That's what I use every time with all of this code. All right, looks like I have the demo here of how to use that script editor. So I'm in my site page. Let me back up a little bit, it was a little quick. That new one that I just made, and you see that little plus sign, that's how I'm going to add a new web part. So it drops down with all my options. And I can see that modern script editor that I had put in. So this one's labeled Smithsonian Institution because that's what they had given me. So right in there, that's where you put your code. So luckily I have mine pasted in there. Well, I would have pasted it in there and it would be great. So I'll be showing you that in the next few demos. All right, so retrieving those images, again, I need to get all the content set up before I can start really putting in that code. So getting those images first was pretty simple. So I was looking at the PDF I was given, and I just used that snipping tool to save those images originally. But then I use a different way to get it into SharePoint because that's what was really important. All already to be in the cloud on there. So I copied this, and then I go back to my Smithsonian site, and they had set up a email workflow that if I emailed that specific address, it would be stored into a list, and my image was stored into one of those columns. So really overall of this step is to get your image somehow into SharePoint so that you can get a link, because that's what I want to use into my code so that it pops up. So you can see here it's already in SharePoint, and now I have this link when I open it up, and that's what I want to use for the code. So I copy that, and then I'm going to go back to my modern script editor web part. You can see I can edit snippet. I've pasted it in my code already. And I'm going to go to that part I indicated before to paste in that link. And now the image shows up. Super easy. Make sure I save that. So that was really important. Saving and then publishing or republishing, if you've already done that already, to save all of your work. So now I have my image in my page. So I did that every time for each of my site pages that had all those different images. So 7 more times, or 8. I've lost track. There was a lot. All right. So now, again, those links are very important to navigating of where I want to. So my next step was creating unique links for every unit, for every image, each hotspot, excuse me. So this honestly took me some time, but luckily I'll show you how I did that, so it'll save you some time. So I'm in my SharePoint list of all of those information, the research that I had done. You can see under this dropdown, I'm going to create a view, and that's how I specifically get this unit information to look how I want to, how to style it a little bit in SharePoint. So this one I'm doing Office of the CIO view. And I had hit all items, but really I want to take that away so it only shows that one that matches. So you can see here under that option, let me back up a little bit. Under filter, instead of all items in view, I want show only items when the following is true. When the unit name is equal to exactly what I put in that SharePoint site, so I know that'll actually show up. It has to be the exact same. So that's why I named it in my list. And then additionally, for it to look a little better, I added the newspaper no line style for it to look in that format, which my boss liked. So that's what I did. So now in this specific view, you can see I have all the information for that unit. And that's the look that I want in my interactive image map. So that's the link that I use and paste into my code to pop up for that modal, which I will get into soon. So now I talked about these these hotspots, but those coordinates, how do you get them? Like, do you guess? That's what I thought at first. I thought you had to guess, but really, I just use this website called Imagemap.net. It's totally free, and it's meant to set up the whole image map for you. But because I had all this extra code and things for it to make it exactly how I wanted, I really just used this tool to steal the coordinates. So I'll show you here how I used that. So here I'm loading the image from website, and that's my Smithsonian site where I had already put the images in before, because I want those dimensions to be exactly the same. So you can see it here. And then in this website, under that specific one that's selected of a new area, I name it. That helps me keep track of which coordinates go to what area. And I click on two corners to create that rectangle because it's already on that setting. So I add a new area for each one, and I repeat the step for every box. And this is great because I can see clearly how I'm making those boxes, and I don't have to worry about what those actual coordinates are because it's doing it for me. So I'm quickly going through and finishing all of those that I know need that hotspot, doing it for all of them, and then show me the code. So that's where it brings up all of those actual coordinates. And again, I put that name in so I can help me keep track of it. You don't have to, but that's how I know, like for this one, it goes to Board of Regents. So I simply am just copying and pasting those coordinates. So I'm going back into SharePoint here, back into that code that I've already pasted in, and adding in those coordinates. So you can see I'm going to scroll to where it is appropriate. Right there. I had some old coordinates in there before. A lot of copying and pasting for me. So I do that for each one. And then once I have all those in and I save and republish again, we're going to see that I'm able to click on those spots, and just for that rectangle. So you're going to see how the cursor changes as I hover over it. Quickly going through, make sure I have them all done, save, and then you're going to see here, quick test was me hovering, so you can see the cursor is changing. So that's how I know it works, or obviously clicking on it. But this was my quick check of seeing that it worked. Just a quick hover. Yeah, that's what I use, and honestly, I don't know how you all feel, but my boss was like, what was that site that you figured out the coordinates? And I was like, oh, it was a free site, imagemap.net. So maybe that's super helpful for you, because that was just something, again, I had stumbled upon and I didn't realize how helpful it was. So here we go. Again, image-map.net. All right, so I keep bringing up this modal thing, but what is it? So it's a graphical control element subordinate to an application's main window. So for me, it looks like a little pop-up window. And this was really important for my boss to have because she didn't want a whole new page opening every time and the navigation of the users to get confusing, opening up new pages or new tabs or new windows. She wanted it all to stay in one window and easy to look at. So having this modal was helpful to just have that pop up and then click out of it and go back to the image map once you were done. So the code I'm about to show you is all from W3 Schools, and the things that I changed you'll see in color. So this was the main modal code, the CSS for it. You can see I have like display none hidden by default because I only want it to be shown when it's clicked upon. and then all these other attributes to get it to look like, as you can see, let me go back in this image here. So you can obviously change these to change the look and make it a little bit prettier, but this is all I needed for now. Bit more, there's another section for the actual content, and I added this image here to show you what each part of it belongs to, because when I first saw it, I was like, I don't know what any of that means. So you can see here what corresponds to the margin, background color, the actual image, padding, border, etc. So again, all of this is on my GitHub already, so no worries about having to remember it. Furthermore, we want that little close button to give users the options to X out of the modal to go back to their original home page. So you can see here how I have that set up and the look of it. All right, so now to get into some of the HTML portion of it. Again, all this white was already set up, but this iframe section was really important. That's how we got it to get that look in the same page. And this is what I actually struggled with for a bit, because before I had that section in, it would give me that modal look, but it would go to a new tab. You could see it obviously refreshing and taking up the whole window, and that's not what I wanted. I wanted it to be overlapping of the page I was already in to act as a pop-up, not go to a whole new tab or a new page. So more of the code, you can see here where I'm assigning some of the variables. This is for the entire modal, and the span is for that little x, the close option. Furthermore, adding some function to it, this first part is when a user clicks on the X, it'll close it. And then also if they click anywhere outside of the modal, that will also close it. The function to actually show the modal, so we're looking at the variable here of the modal and that iframe, and then we're doing this display block instead of none, so it'll actually show up, so it knows that when on the click, it will show up. So let's see all of that in action. All right, so I am in my Smithsonian page, home page. And right now you see that when I click on it, it opens up a whole new window, which is not what I want. So we're going to go back in and fix some of that. So I'm going to go back to edit and edit that snippet. And you're going to see what I had highlighted in purple originally, that window open. That's what I need to change first. Or one of the things I need to change. I'm not sure if I do this first there. But that's one of the problems. It says window open, so that's why I opened a whole new window. That is the first thing I do. That's what I thought. So I'm changing that so that instead of opening to a whole new window, it opens instead as the function I made, which is show modal. So I'm going to go and save that, and I do that for all the other ones that I want to be modal on that page. I have to redo this for every site page I had as well. For the site pages, I had to do something else. We'll get into that. So I make sure I save and republish. So now when I click on it, it opens up a pop-up. This is exactly what we wanted for it to be. It looks like it overlaps. I'm doing a little teaser at the end there that the header navigation are still showing, but we'll get into that. So I've gone over all of the big ideas of how I got to that point, but as you saw, it wasn't perfect. So here are some of my tips and tricks for the problems I encountered to refine it to get to that final look that I wanted. First, that header navigation and toolbar was still there, so I needed to get that hidden somehow. So I'll show you how I did that here. So just where we left off, I can see all that extra stuff, and I don't want it. So I'm going to go into edit that snippet again, edit some of the code. I'll scroll down to that specific attribute. You can see here, I'm appending to the end of that URL I had to that specific item in the SharePoint list, the is here, let me go. It's going too fast for me. Is DLG, the is dialog equals 1. So that is what hides the navigation for that window. So I appended that on to all of those URLs for the SharePoint list. Again, I save and republish it. And now when I click on it again, it should be gone, which it is. Very nice, looks a lot better. Except, so this was a tricky part, as you saw there. See if I back up a little bit. I still see that little page thing at the top there. We don't like that. So let's go fix that part in the next demo, my bad. Hiding that toolbar, before I forget that step, because that was also still there. I'm under that specific link for that item in SharePoint. If I go and edit the page and I change one of the options on the side here, edit web part, and then toolbar type, I want no toolbar. Right now it's full toolbar. So I make sure I say OK to that, so it saves that. And now that should be gone from the look as well. See, now it's not there anymore, the add item. All right, so we're getting there. We're getting to the look that we want. So that hiding the page tab was a little bit tricky. I had to add a little bit more code for that one. So first I have the removes the ribbon on the modal because that page was part of the ribbon. So I added a new function of on the frame refresh. So when that modal pops up, because it's referring to that frame, it looks at the myIframe.document and getting the element ID. This was the element I found in my SharePoint was referring to that ribbon. And then I want the display to be none because obviously I don't want that to be there anymore. And then under the code for the modal, I had to change the onload to be this function instead. So I highlight this document here because I have to change it later for another option, and I'll get to that in a second. But for, I guess I should say specifically for Internet Explorer, this is what I used for that. So unfortunately, I tried this in Google Chrome and the page was still there. And I found out that apparently between browsers, different things happen. So I knew that some people, a lot of people like to use Google Chrome. So I wanted to have the option of that it would work in both browsers. Not personally, for Smithsonian, they recommend using Internet Explorer, so that wasn't a problem. But I know a lot of people, like I said, like to use Google Chrome. So this is the code that I use that identifies what browser the user is using. And then I have these if statements for, if it's this browser, I want to do this set of code instead. So you can see highlighted here in yellow, that's why I'm going to have the different code of how to handle the modal differently based on the browser. So I specifically focus on Chrome because I found that one to be one of the most popular ones among people I know using browser-wise. So you can see here, all this code is the same, but then I have to add a timer. So the way it works in Chrome is that if it loads in a certain time, then it will take away the bar. So this is a bit experimental, to be honest. This color in purple was the time. So this happened in, it's less than a second. So I had to experiment with that number of how quickly I wanted to load, because if it was too fast, then it would just load, or if it was too slow, then it would just load. I think it was too slow, my bad. But yeah, so with Chrome, it's a little bit weird. So I added that in case Chrome users wanted to use it. But overall, I made a note on the site that we recommend using Internet Explorer because that's what all Smithsonian wanted their users to use anyway. Additionally, I noted this before, remember how it's just document for all the other browsers. In Chrome, it wants to be content document, and they want to add a Windows dot in the beginning. So that settles the page part. Make sure I forgot to go over this demo to show you it in action. So you can see here, I'm going to go edit again and add that code in so it will hide away that page option. So So I'll scroll down, you can see I've added here the code to identify which browser is being used. And then you can see for the if statement, what is Google Chrome, you use that function. And if it's other browsers, in this case, I was specifically looking at Internet Explorer, then the show modal function will be that way instead. So basically, I just have show modal be different under those two different functions, the if statements, excuse me. See, I have all of those in. I'm adding that onload code, and that's specifically for Internet Explorer. Chrome does not need that, because that's the problem that Chrome had. It doesn't do the onload. Once I save and republish it, now it should be good. That page tab should finally be gone. So I click on here, it's gone in Internet Explorer, and here I switch to Chrome, and it's also not there. So very good. Now it looks nice and clean, none of that extra stuff in my modal. All right. So now that back to parent site button. So this was really important for us, again, to help with navigation and not get confusing. Like I said in the very beginning, I didn't want users to have to click the back arrow to get back to the home page. I wanted a button or a link to already be there to indicate that users can get back to the home page easily by that. So these were for those extra site pages I had to make for those further hierarchies. So they could easily go back between the home page and those extra pages with those further units. So here's the code here, is very simple. Just for a link to home page, and there. And then I added for, oh my goodness, I'm getting ahead of myself. To continue that opens the new page in the same window and same tab. It doesn't open a whole new window or tab again. Like I've said over and over, we want to avoid that. So this gives me the map name, the map ID is very similar to what we saw before. Instead of what we saw the very first time, which was window.open, and the second time it was show modal, the function we wrote, I have just location, so it just refreshes in the same window to that new page. So to quickly show that in action, you can see here for that, right now it opens up a modal and a modal, which is not quite what we want. So we have to fix that. So it just goes to a new refreshed page and then a modal, and then I can go back easily. You can see here, I go back into the code for that home page, and for that piece of code for specifically in this case secretary, because it has that further hierarchy, instead of show modal, I want just location. So it just reloads in the same window, the same tab. So I'll save that, republish, and now we're going to see when I click on secretary, it just refreshes the page to that further hierarchy. So I can see here the secretary branch. So now it's a whole new one, just a refreshed page, which is nice. And that's the new site page that I talked about in the very beginning. So here I've created another snippet for that button or the link. I paste in that code here, and I added my link back to that home page. So that link there is just the one from before. I save that, again, republish. I say that a lot because it's important to me. There's many times where I forget one and then the code would just be gone. So now I can just click return to parent site. It takes me simply back to the home page. So like I said here, navigation is all contained in one tab, which makes navigation for the front end user very easy. All right, so that really covers everything. Please feel free to ask questions if you have any.
Thanks, Sarah. I cannot see any question has been published. So let's wait for a few minutes. If question is being published, I'll forward it to you, okay?
All right, for sure.
Sarah, I have published a question from John.
Okay.
Can you get the question?
Oh, let's see. What was the hardest part of the project? That page tab that I talked about, being there in Internet Explorer and Google Chrome. Because all the other things that were hidden, I found to be very simple to just add in the part at the end of the link or go into SharePoint and take away the toolbar. Those are easy, but the page tab I had to write a whole new set of code. And not only did it take me a long time to figure out in the first place, I got it done for just Internet Explorer. And before I presented it to my boss, I had this gut feeling. I was like, oh, let me check in Chrome. Sure enough, it didn't work in Chrome. So that was a bit of like a darn. But I figured it out. But yeah, that was such a little thing, but that was what I probably worked on the most, unfortunately. That seems so small. So that was probably the hardest part for me.
Sarah, I am being publishing questions, whatever I'm getting. Please go through and you can carry on with your answer.
Okay, awesome. Someone asked how to get the recording. Is it on the website?
Yeah, that will be on website. That will be replied by me. You can skip that question.
Okay, wasn't sure. What do you wish you knew before you started that you know now? So this was really my first exposure to SharePoint web parts. Before that, I had just one other internship that I did my very beginning work in SharePoint, and web parts do so much. I think it's so cool, and I just learned a lot from that. So it was good to learn from it, but I think I wish I knew more about the other web parts to begin with, because as you can see from this, I used a lot of that modern script editor. So I thought that was like mostly it, just coding, which is fine. I like coding, but it has a bunch of other web parts you can add to make your internet really unique. Do you have any advice for young ladies wanting to get into tech? Yes, I am very passionate about this. I think, unfortunately, there's still a big gender gap, which makes it intimidating, but really, like, that shouldn't be a thing. I want you to stay confident in who you are and keep going of what you want to do. It doesn't have to be coding. It could be any other realm of tech, but if you love coding, that's awesome. There's definitely a lot of communities that you can join to talk to other women who's probably felt the same way. If you want to get involved with Tech Girls, like I said in the beginning, there's an awesome community there. I've been really supported by the ladies who run that and also by the girls that I present to. So I know it's hard to not be afraid to join it, but just go for it. It's so worth it, and feeling empowered as a role model makes it all worth it after that too.